Canisters tossed off ships near Cape Race was a dangerous way to get news in the 1800s. Hear about the fascinating Newfoundland connection to the birth of the Associated Press. And what a legacy. The man behind the discovery of the ancient Basque galleon that sank in Red Bay, Labrador, has died. I'm Paula Gale. Welcome to the broadcast. Well, it was a very dangerous way to get news. Did you know that the ocean off Cape Race played a significant role in early journalism? Our first guest today is Teresa O'Leary, a journalist who used to work here at CBC. A story told to her as a child has led to a book called Race to the Cape. O'Leary's family has been living in Portugal Cove South near Cape Race since the 1700s. To find out more about the story and the book, broadcast producer Todd O'Brien spoke with Teresa, who now lives in British Columbia.
Race to the Cape is a book about, it actually came from a story from my dad, and it's about Cape Race, Newfoundland, which is a pretty mystical, magical place that many people know about and also very dangerous. So when I was a child, Dad was always telling me this story that the AP had a news boat at Cape Race, and they were chasing after the news that was being thrown overboard by steamships coming from England. And as a child, of course, I envisioned newspapers floating on the ocean, and it didn't make much sense to me. But as a young journalist, I researched it and found out that, in fact, it was true that the Associated Press in New York City in the mid-1800s had placed a news boat with 5 men in it, a rowboat, to go out into the ocean and chase after these canisters of mail and news that were being thrown overboard by the steamships coming from England. And there was no transatlantic telegraph yet. So that was the first access to news from England and Europe was at Cape Race. And that's why the AP put their news boat there. But I had to do a lot of research to determine, the truth of the story and why the AP had chosen Cape Race. And, they took part in a very, very dangerous chase for news back in the 1850s.
Yeah, and when I heard that particular story, it's quite captivating, isn't it? It's a very visual thing. These guys going out and, I guess, trying to get barrels of news. So how does that fit into the overall, what you're trying to say in this book?
Well, it's very interesting because I did just start out trying to find out the truth of that story from my dad. It was more like a family story, and that I wanted to find out more about. But the more research I did, the more I discovered that the Cape Race operation was put in place at a time when the Associated Press was expanding and establishing itself as, the first newswire agency in the world. And so what I discovered was that in 1844, the telegraph was launched in the United States. And that telegraph has been dubbed the Victorian Internet because it had the same kind of impact back in the day that the Internet has had with us. But anyway, so the newspapers were in New York City. There was a Mexican war, the war with Mexico between the United States and Mexico in 1846. So the telegraph technology was 2 years old. It was very expensive. All the newspapers in New York were spending a fortune on pony expresses, getting news from the war front to the telegraph lines and getting them north to New York City. But it was a new technology, so it was really expensive. So the frugal-minded men owning the newspapers in New York City, there were about half a dozen of the top ones, they decided to get together and form the Associated Press as a loose coalition just to get news dispatches from the war front, in the southern part of the United States. And when they did that, it was really accidental or organic that fact-based news emerged from that. Because these guys were very, very fierce competitors in New York City, these newspaper owners. They were always competing, right, and trying to make more money. And so this way they got together and they said, okay, we want one dispatch from the war front. That meant it could only be fact-based because otherwise they'd all be arguing over what was in the news reports. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was kind of an organic or accidental occurrence from the formation of these 6 newspapers forming the AP that fact-based news came into focus back in the 1850s.
Right, and you do tell the story of the creation of that wire service, but I think, I guess in what you've done in the book is through your research, you learn a lot as a reader about how all that came about. Like even the use of carrier pigeons, I didn't realize they were so widespreadly used.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the main character of the book, Daniel Craig, like while all that was happening in New York City, Daniel Craig was in Boston, and he was chasing after that news coming from England off Boston Harbor, because the steamships would come and they would sit outside the harbor there, wait for the pilot boat to bring them into Boston Harbor. And so he would hire a rowboat and jump into it with his a basket of carrier pigeons. And he would go out, and this would be early morning, of course, and he would go on any steamship that was there, talk to the captain, talk to the crew, look at anything that was there on paper from the, like the European Digest. And then what he would do is he would write these kind of like headline stories, really, because they were on little pieces of tissue paper. And then he would put those into the claws of his carrier pigeons, and he would send them to shore in Boston. And his wife, Helena, she was on shore, ready to receive the birds, take the messages, go to the telegraph station, and get the news to New York City as soon as possible. So it was all to save time and money. But, I mean, it was unbelievable to me when I was doing this research that I started to talk about carrier pigeons. That was ancient times to me, right?
Yeah, indeed. And like I said, this all mostly around the mid-1800s. And so what you've done is you've brought the historical research but you into something called, creative nonfiction. You weren't there, but, you've recreated some conversations, that kind of thing.
That's right, exactly. That's creative nonfiction. So everything in the book is true. It's all based on factual information that I've researched. And I've been a journalist for 40 years, so I think I know what I'm doing when it comes to research. But anyway, so, there's integrity in the research that I did. But to make the story more accessible, like my first draft would have been a good master's thesis, if you will. It had lots of footnotes, lots of quotes, really dense information. And the publisher and I wanted to make the story more accessible to more people. And so then we focused on creating a narrative or a story around all these facts. And the creative part, which was difficult for me as a journalist, is I had to make up dialogue between my characters, to make it more of like a story. And initially I had a hard time with that. But my publisher and editors, they really taught me that if I based the conversation on reasonable deductions and facts that I had researched, so information that I had that people wrote, let's say, I put those into the mouths of people as they had dialogue. So that was really, the creative part was the challenge for me, because I would have been happy with that first draft going out as a more dense history book, if you will. But this way, hopefully, history is more accessible to more people, I guess,
Yeah, it makes it more fun and entertaining for sure. And I guess, like I said, we'll let people read it. Like I said, I'm partway through, but a little over a third way through, so I look forward to finishing it off. But I guess, and it all comes back to your father, Paul O'Leary, in Portugal Cove South, right, originally?
That's right, exactly. So the O'Learys came to Portugal Cove South in the late 1700s and settled there. And but my dad was born there, but he was a month old when he left the cove in his mother's arms, because his dad got a job with the railway as a station agent. So they moved around to a number of communities. But anyway, Dad was always, like, they would go back in the summers to visit. Dad took us there in the summers, and he was always talking about his beloved Portugal Cove South. And honestly, I guess he infected me with that, because I never lived there either, but I do love that place. And we went to Cape Race many, many times. And another thing, Dad, when he was telling me the AP story back in the day, it's just a story that many families on the Southern Shore know about. It's been handed down through the generations. But another story Dad used to tell me was about my great-aunt Kitty. And she worked at the telegraph at Cape Race around the turn of the century. And so I think that might actually be my next book, because everybody's really interested in Great Aunt Kitty's story. But yes, so it all comes back to Dad telling me these stories and then me wondering if they were true. And then I did the research and found out. And one thing I want to say, there's a couple of things I found out, Todd. Maybe you're not there in the book yet, but one thing that I really want to highlight for people, because the telegraph history is so big in Newfoundland, right? Samuel Morse, the father of the telegraph, the inventor of the electric telegraph, he was in St. John's, Newfoundland in August of 1855.
Right.
Now, that is not in our history books.
No?
That's a piece of history that we do not know historically. I researched it, and I couldn't find it anywhere else.
Interesting. Huh?
But that really thrilled me to find out that piece of information personally because, Dad was always talking about the telegraph as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a really interesting part of the book. There's a whole visit. It's part of the Transatlantic Telegraph Project. Morse was part of that initially. So he came to Newfoundland with the Cyrus Field and the investors from New York City who were investing in the transatlantic telegraph. So they all came to Newfoundland in 1855. So that's a really fun part of the book that people might not know about. And the other thing is that, there's a shipwreck in there, the Anglo-Saxon, which is the worst one on Newfoundland shores. But to me, it's the least known. So there's a chapter or two about the Anglo-Saxon wreck as well, which took place during this time of the race to the Cape.
Yeah, that's quite the story. Okay, Teresa O'Leary, thanks so much for this.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you, Todd.
That was Teresa O'Leary. She is the author of Race to the Cape, The Daring News Chase, The Birth of the Associated Press, and the journalist at the heart of it all. This is published by Ingenium Books. It's available at the Rooms in St. John's and bookstores such as Chapters. Teresa's going to be home in July, and on July 8th, she's planning to do a reading at the Myrick Interpretation Center at Cape Race.